On 7 March 1945 at Remagen, Germany, the United States 9th Armored Division Combat Command B, under Lieutenant Colonel Leonard Engerman, discovered the Ludendorff Bridge intact across the Rhine, spanning from Remagen to Erpel. The bridge, a double-track railway structure, measured 1,025 feet in length, a critical metric for crossing capacity. German forces, expecting to demolish it, had wired the span with explosives, but partial detonations failed to bring it down. Captain Karl H. Timmermann, commanding Company A, 27th Armored Infantry Battalion, received orders to seize the bridge before German engineers could complete their work. The assault began under a hail of small arms fire and sporadic artillery from the Erpel side. Timmermann's infantrymen, supported by tanks and half-tracks staged on the western bank, faced a narrow path across open decking. American engineers, moving with wire cutters and explosives, expertise scrambled to neutralize demolition charges. The bridge's steel trusses, towering above the Rhine's swift current, framed a gauntlet of smoke and ricochet. By late afternoon, assault teams had crossed and secured a foothold on the eastern abutment, digging in near the railway tunnel mouth at Erpel. The number that matters is speed assault teams covered 1,025 feet in under 2 hours. German defenders caught off guard mustered only fragmented resistance. Machine gun nests in the bridge towers and riflemen in the tunnel fired until suppressed. Engineers cut firing circuits after 50 attempts at detonation. American losses were light but steady, with medics pulling wounded into cover behind steel girders. Timmermann, crossing after his lead squads, organized defenses on the far bank, directing fire against German positions in Erpel's rocky slopes. The bridge, though damaged, held under the weight of infantry and light vehicles, a testament to its pre-war engineering. From the German perspective, the turning point stung. American boots on the eastern bank mocked demolition plans. Commanders in Berlin, already stretched by Soviet advances, learned of the failure by dusk. The Rhine, meant to be an impenetrable moat, was now a highway for Allied armour. The seizure forced a tactical shift. German reserves, already depleted, would need to counterattack a bridgehead that should not have existed. By nightfall, the United States had transformed a defensive barrier into an offensive springboard, with 1,025 feet of steel as the pivot. American commanders acted swiftly to exploit the Ludendorff Bridge seizure on the 7th of March, 1945. Reinforcements, including infantry, armour and anti-aircraft units from the 9th Armoured Division, crossed the 1,025-foot span under cover of darkness. The bridge, weakened by partial demolitions, groaned under the weight of M4 Sherman tanks, but engineers deemed it stable for limited traffic. Smoke generators emplaced by dawn on 8 March shrouded the crossing to shield it from German artillery observers on the Erpel heights. The number that matters is capacity. The bridge supported 10 vehicles per hour at peak flow. German counterattacks began within hours as Luftwaffe aircraft, including Messerschmitt Bf 109 seconds, struck the bridgehead. American anti-aircraft guns rushed across the Rhine, met them with barrages of 40mm fire, downing several planes. On the ground, German infantry and Panzer IVs probed the bridgehead's perimeter, but scattered coordination and fuel shortages blunted their efforts. United States engineers worked relentlessly, reinforcing the bridge's damaged girders with steel cables and timber. By 9 March, pontoon bridges were under construction nearby, multiplying crossing capacity to sustain the growing foothold east of the Rhine. The bridgehead expanded steadily, with infantrymen like Sergeant Alexander A. Drabik digging in among Erpel's rocky outcrops. Artillery support, positioned west of the Rhine, pounded German assembly areas, guided by forward observers, radioing from the eastern bank. The terrain, a mix of steep hills and open fields, favoured defenders, but American numbers and firepower overwhelmed German delaying tactics. Engineers maintained the bridge after 100 hours of continuous reinforcement. German V-2 rockets, launched in desperation, struck near Remagen, but failed to hit the span or disrupt operations. From the German perspective, the turning point deepened. Despair. American pontoons mocked their river defense strategy. Commanders diverted scarce aircraft and artillery to a bridgehead they could not dislodge, draining resources from other fronts. The Rhine, once a psychological bulwark, now trapped German units against its banks with no room to maneuver. American commanders, sensing the shift, poured more battalions across, turning a tactical surprise into a strategic rupture. By 10 March, the bridgehead spanned several miles, with supply lines secured and armor massing for a breakout. The relentless pace of reinforcement and engineering ensured the bridge's survival until 17 March, when the Ludendorff collapsed under cumulative strain. By then, pontoon bridges and additional crossings carried the weight of the advance. The Remagen bridgehead, born from a single afternoon's audacity, had forced Germany to confront an unwinnable defense, accelerating the collapse of the Western Front. The seizure of the Ludendorff Bridge on 7 March 1945 at Remagen reshaped the Western Front's geometry. The United States First Army under Lieutenant General Courtney Hodges funneled battalions across the 1,025-foot span and newly built pontoon bridges, expanding the bridgehead east of the Rhine. By 12 March, the foothold stretched 8 miles wide and 5 miles deep, anchored by infantry and armor from the 9th Armored Division and supporting corps. Engineers sustained the crossing capacity at 20 vehicles per hour across combined spans, a metric that defined the bridgehead's growth. Smoke screens and anti-aircraft batteries protected the crossings from German air and artillery strikes, which grew more desperate but less effective daily. German commanders reeling from the breach scrambled to contain the bridgehead. Field Marshal Walter Model, overseeing Army Group B, diverted Panzer and Volksgrenadier units to Erpel's Hills, but fuel shortages and Allied air superiority crippled their mobility. Luftwaffe sorties, including Arado R-234 jet bombers, targeted the bridge and pontoons, only to face heavy losses from American P-47 Thunderbolts patrolling at 15,000 feet. German artillery firing from Sieg River positions lobbed shells intermittently, but counter-battery fire from United States 155mm guns silenced many. Engineers reinforced pontoons after 72 hours of continuous use. The German response, fragmented by command disarray, failed to disrupt the American buildup. On the ground, United States infantrymen pushed through Erpel's rocky terrain, clearing German machine gun nests with grenades and flamethrowers. Tanks, navigating narrow roads, supported assaults on villages like Linz and Bad Honnef, where German defenders fought from cellars and church steeples. The bridgehead's expansion relied on logistics trucks crossed the Rhine, carrying ammunition, fuel, and rations, maintaining sortie rates for armored units at 10 missions daily. Medics operated field hospitals near the railway tunnel, treating wounded under canvas tents as shells burst overhead. The visual chaos, smoke curling over the river tanks, grinding through mud, engineers welding under fire, underscored the bridgehead's relentless momentum. From the German perspective, the turning point was a death knell. American armor rolling east crushed hopes of a Rhine defense. Model's staff, staring at maps in Koblenz, saw their reserves evaporate as Hitler ordered futile counterattacks. The Rhine, meant to buy months, had fallen in days, leaving units trapped between the river and Allied spearheads. The psychological blow rippled German troops, once confident in their river line, now faced encirclement with no retreat. Hitler's rage, manifested in dismissals and court-martials, only deepened the chaos as officers scrambled to shift blame rather than forces. The bridgehead's growth forced a strategic shift. Allied planners, originally focused on set-piece crossings for late March, redirected resources to exploit Remagen. The United States Third Army, under General George S. Patton, prepared additional crossings south at Mainz, while British and Canadian forces accelerated plans north at Wesel. The Remagen seizure, costing fewer than 100 American lives in the initial assault, had unraveled Germany's defensive doctrine. By 15 March, the bridgehead housed 3 divisions with artillery batteries firing at ranges up to 12 miles to support breakouts. German attempts to destroy the crossings with V-2, rockets and frogmen failed. Most rockets missed, and sappers were captured or killed in the Rhine's currents. The Ludendorff Bridge itself, battered by vibrations and earlier demolitions, collapsed on 17 March, killing 28 American engineers working on repairs. Yet its loss was irrelevant. Pontoon bridges, now 5 in number, carried heavier traffic, and the bridgehead was unassailable. The number that matters is depth. The foothold reached 10 miles east by 18 March. American armor, including M26 Pershing tanks, began probing toward the Lahn River, exploiting gaps in German lines. Luftwaffe attacks dwindled as fuel, and pilots ran dry, leaving the skies to Allied fighters. German civilians fleeing villages added to the confusion clogging roads, model needed for redeployment. The Remagen bridgehead's success lay in its speed and engineering. United States Army engineers working under fire had turned a single railway span into a network of crossings, each capable of supporting 20 vehicles hourly. Signal Corps units maintained radio nets across the Rhine, coordinating artillery and air support with precision. The bridgehead, now a springboard, threatened the Ruhr, Germany's industrial heartland, where coal and steel production fueled the Wehrmacht's fading war machine. German divisions pinned by the river faced relentless pressure as American units maneuvered for a breakout. The Rhine, once a moat, was now a trap, its eastern bank a graveyard for defensive plans. Allied commanders saw the broader implications. The Remagen crossing, achieved without the planned amphibious assaults or heavy casualties, had saved weeks of preparation and thousands of lives. It forced Germany to fight on terrain it could not hold, accelerating the Western Front's collapse. By late March, additional crossings at Oppenheim and Wessel followed, each building on Remagen's momentum. The United States' First and Third Armies prepared to encircle the Ruhr, where Model's forces, numbering over 300,000, faced annihilation. The bridgehead's expansion, driven by engineering and tactical audacity, had turned a single afternoon's gamble into a campaign-defining rupture. The German High Command, in its final delusion, clung to fantasies of a counteroffensive. Hitler's orders to destroy the bridgehead, issued from Berlin's bunkers, ignored the reality of shattered divisions and empty fuel depots. The Remagen breach exposed the Wehrmacht's fragility. No reserves, no air cover, no time. American units, sensing weakness, pressed harder, their radios crackling with coordinates for artillery barrages and airstrikes. The Rhine's fall was not just tactical, it was psychological, stripping Germany of its last natural barrier and its will to resist in the West. The Ruhr, Germany's industrial engine, was a graveyard of steel and coal. American infantry cleared Essen's factories, where Volksgrenadier units fought from slag heaps with rifles and Panzerfausts. Artillery firing at 12-mile ranges demolished strongpoints, and flamethrowers flushed defenders from bunkers. German resistance, fragmented by fuel shortages, relied on teenagers and veterans too exhausted to retreat. Luftwaffe remnants, reduced to fewer than 100 aircraft, offered no challenge. Engineers maintained pontoons after 120 hours of continuous strain. The number that matters is scale. 300,000 German troops faced capture by 15 April. Model's command, holed up near Hagen, unraveled. Orders to break out east ignored the reality of severed rail lines and Allied air dominance. American tanks, advancing at 10 miles daily, cut off Dortmund, isolating German units in pockets of rubble. Supply trucks crossing the Rhine at 20 vehicles hourly ensured United States forces never stalled. Medics operated field hospitals amid Essen's smoke, treating wounded as shells burst nearby. The visual chaos, burning refineries, tanks grinding through debris, civilians fleeing with salvaged belongings, painted the Ruhr's collapse in stark relief. From the German perspective, the turning point was final American armor at Dortmund, ended all hope of escape. Model, staring at encircled maps, issued futile counterattack, orders his staff silenced by the inevitability of defeat. The Ruhr pocket, meant to delay the Allies for months, collapsed in weeks, its defenders trapped by the Rhine they once relied upon. Hitler's rage, expressed through telegraphed dismissals, only deepened the disarray as officers faced court-martials while their men surrendered. The psychological blow was absolute. Germany's industrial heart was lost, and with it, the war in the West. The encirclement's success hinged on engineering and speed. United States Army engineers under fire maintained pontoon bridges and cleared minefields, enabling armor to maneuver freely. Signal Corps units operating radio nets coordinated artillery barrages that shattered German assembly areas. By 12 April, the pocket's perimeter shrank to 50 square miles with 150,000 Germans captured. American commanders, exploiting the Remagen bridgehead's momentum, redirected resources from planned assaults to this unexpected annihilation. The Rhine, breached in a 4-hour battle on the 7th March, had opened a path to the Ruhr's destruction. German civilians fleeing bombed-out cities, clogged roads, further paralyzing Model's forces. White flags rose from factory rooftops as Volksgrenadier units out of ammunition collapsed. The Ruhr's coal and steel, once fueling the Wehrmacht, now lay under Allied control, crippling tank and munition production. The Western Front, fractured by Remagen's audacity, offered no fallback. German divisions west of the Elbe fought only to delay. American radios crackled with orders, directing airstrikes that turned retreating columns into twisted metal. The bridgehead, born from a single afternoon, had forced Germany to expend its last reserves in a trap it could not escape. By 16 April, the Ruhr pocket was effectively liquidated. Model, refusing surrender, took his own life, a final admission of defeat. The First and Third Armies, having captured over 300,000 troops, prepared to race toward the Elbe. The Remagen seizure, achieved through rapid infantry assault and relentless engineering, had unraveled the Rhine's myth, exposed the Ruhr's vulnerability, and set the stage for Germany's collapse in the West. The campaign, pivoting on 20 vehicles crossing hourly, proved that opportunity seized in hours could outweigh months of defensive plans. By mid-April 1945, the Ruhr pocket's fall unleashed United States armies toward Germany's heart. The First Army under Lieutenant General Courtney Hodges and the Third Army led by General George S. Patton surged east from the Rhine, their M4 Shermans and M26 Pershings covering 10 miles daily. Pontoon bridges, maintaining a crossing capacity of 20 vehicles per hour, fed supply lines across the Rhine, ensuring fuel and shells reached advancing columns. Engineers cleared debris and mines, sustaining the breakout's tempo, while P-51 Mustangs swept the skies at 500 miles per hour, unchallenged by a broken Luftwaffe. Germany's Western Front, gutted by the Ruhr's loss, offered scattered resistance. Wehrmacht remnants, reduced to small Kampfgruppen, fought from hedgerows and ruined towns armed with rifles and dwindling Panzerfausts. Fuel shortages grounded their last tanks, leaving Panzer IVs abandoned along autobahns. American artillery firing at 12-mile ranges obliterated strongpoints, and infantry cleared villages with grenades and bayonets. Signal Corps maintained radio nets after 200 hours of continuous operation. The number that matters is distance. United States forces advanced 150 miles by 25 April. The Elbe River, Germany's next barrier, loomed as the final objective. American commanders, coordinating with British and Canadian allies, aimed to link with Soviet forces advancing from the east. The First Army drove toward Magdeburg, while the Third Army targeted Leipzig, their tanks navigating rolling plains and shattered infrastructure. German civilians fleeing with carts and bicycles clogged roads, signaling the Wehrmacht's collapse. Medics treated wounded in field tents, while engineers bridged streams to keep armor moving. The visual chaos, smoke trailing from burning villages, tanks rumbling past surrendered soldiers, marked Germany's unraveling. From the German perspective, the turning point was despair. American tanks at the Elbe buried hopes of prolonged defense. Commanders stripped of divisions received frantic orders from Berlin to hold lines that no longer existed. The Rhine's breach at Remagen, a wound inflicted in 4 hours, had cascaded into total collapse, leaving soldiers to surrender or flee. Hitler's bunker directives demanding counterattacks were ignored by officers facing capture. The psychological toll was complete. Germany's Western armies, once formidable, were now prisoners or ghosts. The Remagen bridgehead's legacy drove this final phase. Its seizure on 7 March, enabled by 20 vehicles crossing hourly, had shattered the Rhine's myth, destroyed the Ruhr, and freed Allied armies to exploit open terrain. American logistics, anchored by engineering, sustained. The advance trucks delivered 10 tons of supplies daily per division. Airfields captured intact hosted P-47 Thunderbolts that strafed retreating columns, their rockets igniting fuel dumps. German V-2 launches, a final act of defiance, struck harmlessly, their mobile platforms overrun by advancing scouts. On 25 April, the First Army linked with Soviet forces at Torgau, on the Elbe, splitting Germany. The Third Army, sweeping south, captured Nuremberg, its streets littered with Nazi banners. German units, numbering fewer than 50,000 effectives west of Berlin, surrendered en masse, their officers waving white flags from church steeples. The Western Front, a concept born of rivers and trenches, ceased to exist. American radios buzzed with coordinates, directing artillery to silence the last machine gun nests. Engineers built temporary spans over the Elbe, preparing for a final thrust that proved unnecessary. The war's end loomed. Hitler's suicide on 30 April, followed by Germany's surrender on 8 May, formalized the collapse Remagen had accelerated. The 4-hour battle, pivoting on a 1,025-foot bridge, had unraveled a front encircled an army and hastened victory. United States engineers, infantry and armor, seizing a fleeting chance, proved that audacity and precision could end a war months early, saving countless lives. The Remagen bridgehead's impact, born from a 4-hour clash on 7 March 1945, rippled beyond the battlefield, reshaping military thought and post-war recovery. United States commanders analyzing the campaign recognized the seizure of the 1,025-foot Ludendorff Bridge as a masterstroke of opportunity. Engineers who sustained pontoon bridges at 20 vehicles per hour became the unsung architects of victory, their work enabling the 1st and 3rd Armies to advance at 10 miles daily. Signal Corps units maintaining radio nets across 350 hours ensured coordination that turned tactical surprise into strategic collapse. The operation's efficiency stunned Allied planners. The Rhine crossing, achieved without the heavy casualties of planned assaults, saved an estimated 10,000 lives, a metric that underscored Remagen's value. Infantry like Sergeant Alexander A. Drabik, who sprinted across the bridge under fire, embodied the speed that broke Germany's river doctrine. Artillery firing at 12-mile ranges and P-47 Thunderbolts diving at 500 miles per hour exploited the bridgehead's momentum, preventing German reserves from regrouping. Engineers reinforced supply lines after 400 hours of relentless labor. The number that matters is lives 10,000, spared by a single day's audacity. Germany's post-war reckoning bore Remagen's imprint. The Rhine's fall, exposing the Ruhr's vulnerability, stripped the Third Reich of its industrial might, hastening surrender on 8 May. German officers interrogated in Allied camps admitted the bridge's capture shattered their defensive calculus, forcing futile counterattacks that bled their forces dry. From the German perspective, the turning point haunted American engineers, outwitting demolition teams, doomed the Rhine's myth. Civilians in Remagen, rebuilding amid rubble, spoke of the bridge as a pivot that ended the war's grind, their towns scarred but free. The United States Army internalized Remagen's lessons, reshaping doctrine for future conflicts. The bridgehead's success, driven by rapid exploitation and engineering, emphasized mobility over static defenses. Training manuals, revised by 1946, cited Remagen as a case study in seizing fleeting chances with 20 vehicles crossing hourly as the benchmark for logistical speed. Military academies taught cadets to prioritize adaptability, drawing on Captain Karl H. Timmerman's decision to rush the bridge despite incomplete intelligence. The visual memory smoke curling over the Rhine, engineers cutting wires, tanks rolling east, became a symbol of precision under pressure. Allied reconstruction efforts also reflected Remagen's legacy. The Rhine, once a barrier, became a commercial artery, with United States engineers aiding German counterparts to restore bridges by 1947. The Ludendorff site, though never rebuilt, drew veterans and historians its twisted girders, a monument to a war-ending gamble. American logistics, honed at Remagen, informed Marshall Plan operations, moving supplies at 10 tons daily per reconstruction site. The bridgehead's psychological impact lingered. Germans rebuilding under Allied oversight saw the Rhine not as a moat, but as a shared lifeline. The campaign's echo reached beyond tactics. Remagen proved that engineering paired with courage could alter history's course in hours. The 4-hour battle, sparked by a bridge left standing, had forced Germany onto indefensible ground, collapsing the Western Front and saving months of bloodshed. United States forces, leveraging 20 vehicles per hour, demonstrated that wars could end not through attrition, but through opportunity. Their success, a blueprint for future victories. The Remagen bridgehead, captured in 4 hours on 7th of March 1945, transcended its battlefield origins to redefine warfare's principles. United States military planners studying the 1,025-foot Ludendorff Bridge's seizure saw a model for exploiting fleeting chances with surgical precision. Engineers maintaining pontoon bridges at 20 vehicles per hour had fueled the 1st and 3rd Army's advance at 10 miles daily, a metric that became a logistical gold standard. Signal Corps units sustaining radio nets for 500 hours ensured coordination that shattered Germany's Western Front. The United States Army embedded Remagen's lessons into its corps. By 1950, field manuals cited Captain Carl H. Timmerman's assault executed under machine gun fire as a case study in decisive action. The Rhine crossing, costing fewer than 100 lives, saved an estimated 10,000 casualties by bypassing planned assaults, a metric that reshaped strategic priorities. Artillery firing at 12-mile ranges and P-47 Thunderbolts diving at 500 miles per hour had turned the bridgehead into a spearhead paralyzing German reserves. Engineers reinforced supply lines after 600 hours of relentless effort. The number that matters is impact 10,000 lives preserved by one afternoon's gamble. Germany's post-war military reborn under NATO internalized Remagen's failure. Wehrmacht veterans lecturing at Bundeswehr academies described the bridge's loss as a fatal blow, their river doctrine undone by American speed. From the German perspective, the turning point burned United States engineers. Outpacing demolition teams crushed their Rhine myth. The 4-hour breach broadcast in Allied newsreels became a cautionary tale, pushing German strategists to embrace mobility over fixed defenses. Post-war analyses estimated the Rhine's fall accelerated Germany's surrender by 60 days, a timeline shift born of 20 vehicles crossing hourly. Cold War tactics bore Remagen's stamp. United States armored divisions facing Soviet forces along the Fulda Gap trained to seize bridges at 20 vehicles per hour, mirroring the Rhine's logistical tempo. Engineers by 1953 deployed mobile bridges spanning 1,000 feet in 90 minutes, a direct evolution of Remagen's pontoon success. NATO exercises, simulating river crossings, recreated the visual chaos: tanks rolling under smoke, engineers assembling spans amid mock artillery that defined the 1945 breakthrough. Military academies taught cadets to prioritize opportunity, citing Remagen as proof that audacity could trump attrition. The Rhine itself, reborn as a commercial artery, carried Remagen's legacy. United States engineers aiding German reconstruction restored crossings by 1950, moving 10 tons of materials daily per site. The Ludendorff site, a tangle of sunken steel, became a pilgrimage point for veterans and historians, its story etched in plaques along Remagen's banks. German communities rebuilding Erpel honored the bridgehead's role in ending the war, their gratitude voiced in ceremonies attended by American survivors. The psychological shift was profound. The Rhine, once a fortress, now United Nations, its bridges symbols of peace. Remagen's enduring lesson was simple. Wars could pivot on moments, not months. The 4-hour battle, driven by 20 vehicles per hour, had collapsed a front, saved thousands, and reshaped military thought. United States forces, blending engineering with tactical courage, proved that a single bridge seized with precision could end an empire. The Rhine's breach, a fleeting act of daring, became a blueprint for victory, guiding armies, engineers, and nations toward a future where opportunity, not firepower, defined success. Its echo, born in steel and smoke, endures as a testament to what audacity can achieve.